Jesus said, "Wretched is the body that depends on a body, and wretched is the soul that depends on these too." These words bring us to the exploration of the concept of dependence, and, though it seems strange, the context of the Gospel of Thomas initially directed my thoughts towards food. Dependence on food. The reason is immediately clear if saying 11 is read, where Jesus says at a certain point, "In the days when you consumed what is dead, you made it what is alive," or the following. They saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb on his way to Judea. He said to his disciples, "Why does that man carry the lamb around?" They said to him, "So that he may kill it and eat it." He said to them, "As long as it is alive, he won't eat it, but only when he has killed it and it has become a corpse." They said to him, "Otherwise he cannot do it." He said to them, "You too look for a place for your repose, so that you may not become a corpse and get eaten." The link with food is, in fact, suggested by the important detail where in the Gospel of Thomas the term body is often associated with the term corpse, and obviously one can only eat what is inanimate, that has been rendered a corpse. Let us consider, however, that Jesus is concealing his message, and thus food easily becomes the symbol of something else. Let us thus turn our attention to the cultural tradition in which Jesus lived. According to the Jewish religion, food is divided into two broad categories: kosher and non-kosher. A food described as kosher conforms to the rigid eating rules prescribed by the Torah. It is important to know that the Jewish Bible is called Tanakh and consists of three parts. The first part is called the Torah, which means law, the second Nevi'im, which means prophets, and the third Ketuvim, which means saints. The Torah contains 5 books, whereas the Tanakh in all contains 24 books. The first 5 books of the Christian Bible coincides, worth noting, with the Torah, but Christians prefer to call it the Pentateuch. Let us return to food. A non-kosher food is not suitable as foodstuff because it would compromise the purity of the soul of a believing consumer. The non-kosher food par excellence is pork. We can well understand then the shock caused in a believer in the Torah by the parable of the prodigal son, where it describes the young man eating the carobs which were fed to the pigs. However, Torahs are also divided into kosher and non-kosher. A kosher Torah is appropriate for religious use and is called Sefer Torah. A Sefer Torah is the most sacred object in the Jewish religion and must be made following complex and strict traditional rules in order to be adequate and suitable for ritual use. For example, a Sefer Torah must be written only by hand and on parchment. To make a Torah, between 62 and 84 sheets of parchments are required, tied together with the tendons of the same animal from which came the skin which the parchment itself was made of. Please note that today Torahs obviously exist which are printed on paper, but they are not considered kosher. A Sefer Torah can also only be written by a scribe who has to know the complex rules of Katav Ashurit, Assyrian writing. As a Sefer Torah incorporates the holiness of its message, all attention must be focused purely on the written text. Therefore, the use of black ink only is permitted, and neither written nor painted embellishment are allowed. It is worth mentioning that the scribe must know more than 4,000 rules, and to mistake even a single letter in the process of writing renders the Torah non-kosher, that is, not fit for ritual use. It is easy to understand, therefore, how fundamental a figure the scribe is within the Jewish religion. Becoming a scribe requires rigorous study and the development of great skill in writing, as well as deep knowledge of the law, that is, of the Torah, and above all, a God-fearing believer completely dedicated to the holiness of the Torah scroll. Everything we have said about the Sefer Torah was valid and practiced at the time of Jesus. Let us return to the Gospel of Thomas and read this saying. His disciples said to him, 24 prophets spoke in Israel, and all of them spoke in you. He said to them, you have omitted the one living in your presence, and have spoken only of the dead. The 24 prophets is an expression that identifies the Tanakh. Thus, Jesus indicates in the word of the Bible something dead, while he represents himself as the living. If we combine these elements, we can say that, in Jesus' view according to Thomas, the word of the Torah is a dead thing, which depends on the parchment on which it is written, but the parchment in its turn is taken from the skin of a dead animal, a corpse. Wretched, therefore, is a body, the word of the Torah, that depends on another body, the parchment, and wretched is the spirit, a living man, who depends on both of them. But what is this, you will say? Doesn't Jesus in the Synoptic Gospel say, don't think that I came to destroy the law, that is the Torah, or the prophets, that is the Tanakh. I didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill. Matthew 5:17. Besides, how many times have you heard believers say that the word is life and is alive? Saying 87 seems instead to attack the holiness of the scriptures. This video presentation will conclude here. You can read the interpretation of sayings number 7 and 4 in the remaining part of the book. In addition, you can read the interpretation of sayings 97 and 98, but also the interpretation of the parable of the sower, of the parable of the workers in the vineyard, and of the parable of the wicked tenants, putting them within the context of the Gospel of Thomas, revealing, this way, a new and astonishing, even disturbing meaning. Thank you for watching.